Welcome to TCBC Bicycle University for February 16th, 2023. My name is Edward Ebro, and I'm the coordinator for Bike U. Tonight, we will be hearing from Ryan Saathoff, service manager at Now Bikes in Arden Hills. But before we begin, just a few announcements. Excuse me, this is the second session of Bike U for the 2023 TCBC ride year. And if you've not heard the previous session on winter bicycling, please do. And also all the sessions from the 2022 ride year. There's some really great programs on the environment, TCBC history, equity in bicycling, electric bikes, and the Greenway. Please go to the Bike U page off the main TCB website for more information. On that site, you will find a link to each of the sessions and the recording on the YouTube channel. The recording tonight will be up after the conclusion of the meeting and after I've had time to put it on YouTube. I want to thank our TCBC Bike U Council of Regents, which includes John Benda, Mike Beatles, and Tim Rand, for all their work. If anyone else would like to join the council, please contact me as we welcome others to participate. Since we have had a recent vacancy with Shelby Miller stepping down, we would like one or two others to join the council, and want to give a big thanks to Shelby for his time helping us. We really want the council to be representative of the entire club so that we can cover subjects you would like to see at Bike U. So contact me or any one of our council members. I do have to warn you, however, that if you do apply, there is a very extensive academic application and review process. There's a comprehensive written submission, oral presentation are all required. And you know, of course, I'm kidding. We do need members though, so please join us. During the session tonight, please keep your audio muted, but do keep your video on so that we can show who is in attendance. Remember, we're recording this session. If you don't have yourself on mute and make any noise, it switches the main video, and so it messes up the recording. So only take yourself off mute when you're ready to ask a question. And then when you're done asking it, please take it back off. There will be a question and answer session after the presentation, but during the meeting, you can enter questions in the Zoom chat function. And Ryan said in advance that, you know, he doesn't mind if it's relevant at the time. If you want to ask a question, you can. So we can make this interactive process. Mike and I will be monitoring questions and make sure they do get answers during Q&A. So if you think of something, go ahead and put them in the chat. I would like now to introduce Mike Beatles, who has coordinated the program tonight, and Mike will introduce Ryan. Mike, over to you.
Yeah, very good. So when the Bike U Regents were thinking about possible topics this year, and we noticed a lot of fat bikes around town, they're becoming increasingly popular. It was time to research and see if we can get someone to chat about these. I personally got my fat bike about 4 years ago from Now Sports in Arden Hills. I believe there's a location in St. Paul also, if I remember. Yes, okay. And I have to admit, it is hands down the most fun bike I ride. From winter riding, single track riding, gravel riding, tar trail, street riding, or just plain hop on the bike for a quick spin around the block. So even though they look heavy and maybe sound a little like a monster truck with the rumbling tires, I can say that my fat bike is actually surprisingly lighter than I thought it would be, and fairly easy to control. There are a few things that I have ridden over, a few smaller obstacles, intentionally and unintentionally, but without worrying as much as I would like if I was on my road bike. So we approach Now Sports because they are one of the TCBC sponsors, as Edward mentioned, and TCBC does appreciate the support, to see if they were interested for the opportunity to do a fat bike presentation for Bike U. The store manager in Arden Hills said, absolutely, and then mentioned Ryan, saying he is our fat bike guy. So there we go. So I've previously ridden with Ryan on and his other co-leaders at a Now Sports fat bike demo group ride it was incredible to see more than 25 fat bikers out there. And he keeps them together at a beginner pace. And it was really fun. Had a great time. Now for an introduction to Ryan. Ryan Saathoff is the service manager of Now Sports in Arden Hills, Minnesota. He has been in the bicycle industry for over 20 years. Over those 20 plus years, Ryan has attended the Barnett Bicycle Institute taught by John Barnett and has completed the Bill Woodall Race Mechanic Clinic by USA Cycling. He has completed a multitude of online and in-person training courses by Shimano, SRAM, Park Tool, QBP brands, RockShox, Fox, and Bosch, and is Bosch and S-Tech certified. Ryan is a dedicated bicycle mechanic and enjoys leading fat bike rides for Now Sports all year long. Not just winter, all year long. So ladies and gentlemen, TCBC Bike U now presents Fat Bikes with Ryan Saathoff from Now Sports. Take it away, Ryan.
Hey everybody, thank you for coming. It's great to see you guys. Mike, we appreciate you coming out the other day. That was a lot of fun. It's one of our bigger groups this year so far. So it was really cool to have everybody there. Like Mike said, I am the service manager over at Now Bikes in Arden Hills. I've been doing this since I was a little kid, since I was like 16 years old. Bikes have kind of been my thing. I've been a mechanic all this time. So the fat tire thing is really had me interested. When that Surly Pugsley came out back in 2004 or so, it blew me away. It was so amazing. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that. Fat bikes have been around for quite a long time. People used to take, two rims and they would build the two rims into one hub and put two tires on it to have this big fat tire. But back in like 2004, 2005, Surly bikes made them kind of commercially available. So that was kind of the first time that you could just go to a bike shop and purchase one of these fat tire bikes. The bike was called the Pugsley. That's really the one that started this kind of fat tire craze for most of us here. Fat bikes, typically are defined by having a tire that's 3.8 inches or wider. Currently, they go up to over 5 inches in width and come in like 26-inch wheel sizes and 27.5-inch wheel sizes for different purposes. They're used for winter recreation, summer recreation. People commute on them. People have them as their solo bike to use year-round for different activities. So it's quite a versatile bike. They don't need to be exclusively ridden in the snow or even off-road. I ride mine year-round, like I said. We use them all winter in the snow. We use them all summer on mountain bike trails. We do group rides on paved trails with them when the trails are rained out. So we'll do rides from out to Stillwater and back on Browns Creek. I got a lot of friends who are commuting on them, so it's a very versatile bike. For the beginners, there's kind of a lot to know. A lot of places to start. The best thing to do is to kind of find yourself with a group that can take you out to teach you a lot. Because there's a few things to know. Let's see here. For a beginner, you're going to want to pick a day that's the weather's pretty decent. You don't want to go out when it's sub-zero. Kind of in that 20-degree area would be a great day to start this process and get set up on a bike that'll fit you. And pick a day where it's it didn't just snow the day before, so the trail is nice and packed down. Minnesota has lots of places to ride these bikes. We have hundreds of miles of single track trails that are groomed and maintained in the winter, as well as many state and forest roads that you can ride. Fort Snelling, I know we had mentioned earlier that they have some trails out there. Some of them are closed right now due to erosion, but they've got quite a few trails over in that area too. There's a nonprofit called MORC, Minnesota Off-Road Cyclists, that maintains most of the trails in the Twin Cities. And there's a company called Deepwoods Groomers and Volunteers that snowshoe and have some machinery that maintain some of the others. But there's really a lot of places you can do it. You're kind of limitless with where you can use these bikes. Let's see. Another thing about these fat tire bikes is they're really good in loose terrain. If you're not stuck to even a road, you can go out on the beaches with them in the sand. If you go out to California or Florida, you'll see a lot of people out there cruising the beaches on these fat tire bikes because they don't sink in to the loose terrain like a standard tire would. So it really makes them very, very versatile. When you're getting into the fat bikes, gear selection, clothing can be really, really important for having a successful ride. If you haven't dressed for the winter for cycling ever, a few tips. Base layers is probably one of the most important pieces of clothing you can have on. Always have a quality base layer to start with. You're going to want to add a long sleeve or a windbreaker jacket or a thermal jersey over that, depending on the weather conditions. Make sure you're wearing either like a base layer pant or thermal cycling bibs paired with like a soft shell pant to ensure that you're not going to get too cold or overheat. Overheating is just as bad as getting too cold. When you overheat, you sweat, and what'll happen is then you're going to get really cold after you get sweat. So try not to overdress. Pogies are often recommended for your hands. They're these big, huge mittens that kind of go over your handlebar to help keep your hands insulated from the cold. You can end up using a fairly lightweight glove with pogies in the winter. You don't have to wear a really thick glove, which keeps your dexterity available. Most of us use it. I own two different pairs for different temperatures. I've kind of got my really cold weather pair of pogies and a lightweight pair of pogies. I start wearing them around 30 degrees or so. Some people wear just gloves, but I get cold now. so I need to wear these pogies. Keeping your hands and feet warm is probably one of the hardest parts of regulating your body temperature. So you really want to make sure your hands and feet stay warm. As far as the footwear, some people prefer to clip in while others use flat pedals like a standard pedal. If you're going to clip in, a lot of companies make some really good cycling boots that are well insulated. The cost can be expensive, but they're well worth it if you ride a lot. The other group is just going to be wearing a pair of really well insulated outdoor boots. But you just got to make sure you're wearing the right thing so that way you're not getting too cold. Once you get cold, it gets really miserable. So make sure you're warm. Waterproof footwear is a bonus too. We do get some of these days where we hover around 30 degrees and you get some puddles, and when your feet get wet, it changes the whole experience. They also make winter helmets for cycling now. It's more or less a ski helmet. So it's got insulation, it's got ear covers. It's really changed the game for our headwear. A good face covering is recommended as well. They make fairly lightweight versions as well as thermal windproof versions as well, depending on the weather. With the cycling gear, the clothing, you really have to try a few things to figure out where your threshold is, what you need to stay warm and comfortable on the ride. A lot of us will bring extra clothing. We'll bring an extra pair of gloves with us. We'll bring, an extra jacket or a lighter weight jacket, and you fold it up and put it in your pocket to make sure you're not going to overheat and you're not going to be too cold. There's also chemical hand warmers people use and electronic hand warmers that people use. They'll either throw them in their pogies or keep them in their pockets for when they need to use those in case they underdressed. One thing we found as far as gear selection over the years is to replace the aluminum handlebars on the bikes with carbon fiber, as the carbon helps insulate you from the cold that aluminum just puts right into those grips. If you pair the carbon bar with a set of like silicone grips, that seems to be the best combination to insulate you from the cold. The other big piece of winter riding is tires. And tires we could talk about for a very long time, but it can make or break the ride. Some winters we don't need studded tires, some you do. it's kind of best practice if you're going to be riding your bike or your fat bike all winter, just have studded tires all winter long. They're expensive, but so is a broken elbow. So it really makes a huge difference. A lot of these companies make all sorts of different tread patterns for fat bike tires now. They make slicks for the road. They make summer tires. They make winter non-studded. They make winter studded. They make race tires. So that there's a quite a selection. For me, when I'm looking at tires, I don't go very fast. I'm not out there to race. I just want a lot of traction. So I tend to pick a tire with tall knobs on it, large lugs, to make sure we have a lot of traction. And then if it is going to be icy, or if it kind of gets to that point, studded tires are recommended. Like over this winter, for the most part, we haven't really needed studded tires until now. With all that rain we just got, the trails get iced over, and studs are highly recommended for fat biking right now. They'll really keep you safe. Having a small pump with you is really good to have on your ride in case you need to adjust your tire pressure. Make sure you carry a multi-tool. And then again, I like to have a pair of chemical hand warmers or electronic hand warmers with me, extra gloves, hat, possibly some food if you're out there for a long time. So that'd be a good kind of a gear selection. Tire pressure is very important when riding these fat tire bikes. You know, your road bike, you're sitting around 90 to 100 PSI. Your mountain bike, you know, you're 20 to 30 PSI. The fat tires, they vary in the single digits all the way up to 20 PSI. In general, you can have a tire that goes from 3 PSI all the way up to 20 PSI, depending on riding conditions and where you're going to go. In general, we kind of have some ranges for fat tire pressures we like to stay with. In the snow, we like that 3 to 10 PSI range. And 3 to 10 is a big range. Even 1 PSI on these bikes can make quite a big difference. In the dirt in the summer, we like that 7 to 12 PSI, and then on pavement at 12 to 20. Generally, you never need to really go over 20 PSI, especially as some of these rims and tires have pressure limits. So you need to check with manufacturers on pressure limits. Some of these carbon fiber rims, you can't exceed 20 PSI without damaging it. One of the things I like to do before my ride is check the tire pressure. I'll generally start my off-road winter ride with my tire pressure a little higher than I think I'm going to need for that day, because it's a lot easier to deflate that tire on the trail than it is to inflate it in case I've gone too low. So it's kind of a little tip. So start a little high and then deflate as needed. And remember, if you put your tire at 10 PSI indoors at 70 PSI, it is not going to be 10 PSI when it's 15 degrees out. So it's going to lose some air pressure to do the temperature change. So make sure when you're checking your temperature that you're doing it outside at the temperature you're actually riding at. A good digital gauge that reads single digits can help you too. There's a bunch of brands that make them. They're not too expensive and they're very valuable. You can use them on your fat tire bike from 2 PSI on up, but they work on your road bike at 110 PSI if you want them to. So that'd be a good tool to have when you're starting out to figure out tire pressure. For those of you who have ridden with me, you don't see us using a tire gauge on the trail so often. We'll just kind of walk up to your bike and push on your tire and we'll go, yeah, that feels about right. You kind of want the tire to deform a little bit when you're sitting on it. You don't want it to be so rigid that you're sinking into the snow and trail, because it kind of chews up the trail conditions. So a little deformation of the tire when your weight is on it is kind of what you're looking for. But in general, again, if you're on the trail and you're bouncing around a lot and you're not slipping, you might have too little air in your pressure because that tire's just too soft. It just bounces around. But if you're sliding around on the bike, that would be a good time to deflate your tire if you don't have good traction. You don't have to take that much out. 1 PSI would be a good start. So you can just open the valve and hold it for a few seconds and then try again. Small changes make a big difference. So you got to kind of practice around with your tire pressure once you get going. There's several types of fat fat tire bikes out there, a lot of different frames, from steel frames all the way up to carbon fiber and titanium frames. The steel is kind of your less expensive bikes, where your carbon fiber and titanium are your fairly expensive bikes. You're going to have weights on these bicycles ranging from 40 or so pounds all the way down to 18, 19 pounds we've seen in some circumstances. So you can get them very, very light if you are into that kind of thing. Typically the bikes now have 1x drivetrains. So one gear up front and then a multitude in the back, anywhere from 10 to 12 gears in the back right now. The early ones had 2 or 3 gears up front, but they've kind of gone away from the whole front derailleur on them. It allows for a larger tire in the back when you don't need to have that front derailleur there. As far as local events, there's quite a few. There's a website that a friend of ours puts out there. It is the Minnesota Bike Trail Navigator.blogspot, and I put that in the link here. Chris operates that site, and he makes this. He posts virtually every ride out there in the Twin Cities. Not every ride is a beginner-friendly ride. Some are a much faster pace or go on a trail system that isn't very beginner-friendly. Our shop does a ride typically on Sunday mornings, most of the year round. That is a beginner-friendly ride. We offer free demo bikes for people who would like to try the sport. We have 2 brands that we use right now. Most sizes are available. But the bigger thing is it is a beginner-friendly ride. So anybody can come on this ride to learn how to ride one of these bikes and ride the trail and kind of learn about tire pressure and gear selection and even more without obligation. The riding group we have typically varies from 10 all the way up to 30, but we're usually in the mid-teens for our rides. So that'd be a good ride to check out for anybody who's interested in kind of getting into fat bikes as a beginner. You'll learn quite a lot with our group. We're not going to leave you off in the woods. We always have somebody kind of sitting there at the back of the group, making sure everyone's safe and accounted for. So that'd be a good thing to do. And if you can't come on Sundays, check out that Trail Navigator, because he's got all sorts of rides and events on there that are really great for beginners as well. And I think we can maybe start with some questions here.
Sure. Anybody who has a question, just go ahead and unmute yourself, ask your question, then go back on mute again so that Ryan can answer, and we'll continue. I guess I had a question right off. How does one reserve a demo? I think.
Yeah, so with our shop, to reserve a demo bike, you just got to call us. We post our rides on Facebook on Fridays or Saturdays for the Sunday morning ride. The Sunday morning ride starts about 8:30. But if you call our shop, that's how you'll reserve a bike. This Sunday is a little different. We are partnering with Ramsey County, and this Sunday we're going to be at Keller Lake off of 36 and 61, and we're going to be doing kind of one of their. They've kind of got a winter event going on where they're having a fat bike sampler. So we will be out there, and then Otso Bikes will also be out there from 10 to 3 doing demos. And this is an open demo this Sunday, which means you don't have to make a reservation. You can just show up, bring a helmet, make sure you have your gear, and you can come ride a course. They've got about a 4-mile course that Deep Woods Groomers just groomed this week out there. So it should be a lot of fun. And again, there's no reservation. You can just jump on a bike and go ride it around this loop that they made. So that'll be really cool. But for our ride, just give us a call and reserve a bike. And then there's no cost to it. We rent them as well. You do pay for that, but for the demo ride, the group ride, it's totally free.
And you had a number of leaders on the ride too, if I remember right.
Yeah, so I organized the ride, and I've got a couple of friends and coworkers who, not every week, but most weeks, there's someone else out there with me, at least one. Marsh, you met, typically sits in the back and sweeps the course, make sure everyone's safe. And then I think Matt was out there when you were there. I think John might have been there as well. So usually we have 2 or 3 extra people there that are able to help and guide everybody.
Ryan, I had a question on the bikes themselves. I mean, they're in the mountain bike class, right? Is there a lot of difference, or has there been improvements in the geometry of the bikes? And then also, could you comment, you mentioned there's the different widths. What would you use the different widths for? Or what would they be good for, like a 3-inch compared to a 4.5 or a 5? And then talk about tubeless too.
Yeah, the bikes have changed dramatically since that Pugsley first came out. The Pugsley actually used a rear hub on the front and the rear of that bike. So you could have a gear set on the front and a gear set on the back and then switch the wheels if you ever wanted to. But that bike didn't ride very good. It was a kind of heavy, kind of not great handling. They've changed the geometry a lot since then. They handle much more like a modern mountain bike now than that Pugsley did. So the bikes now are a lot more stable than before. As far as tire sizes go, that 3.8 to over 5 inches is kind of your standard tire size now. People use them for different purposes. So if you're out there and you're going to go race these fat tire bikes, you're running 4-inch tires. 26-inch by 4 inches was kind of the standard. If some people ride in areas where the trails aren't groomed very well, or the snow is looser, you could say, and that's where you'd want the wider tire, the 5-inch tire. The larger the tire, the more flotation and traction you're going to have. So if you're riding groomed trails all the time, 4-inch is going to be just fine. If you're riding kind of wherever you go, you're just going to go ride. The bigger tires aren't bad. Personally, I'm riding 4.4-inch tires right now, and that's what I've found to be a pretty happy medium for myself. That 4.2, 4.4 gives me plenty of traction. Tubeless tires is a big deal. When you're looking at bikes, tubeless tires can be very helpful. We found over the years that with tubeless tires, it makes the biggest difference with a fat bike versus any other bike out there. They make tubeless for road and mountain, but you get the most out of your tubeless system on your fat tire bike. Those fat tire tubes are really heavy. So when we pull those out and add sealant in instead, it lightens up that wheel, makes it roll faster, and it offers you quite a bit of puncture protection. You can actually run, 2-3 psi. We've seen people even run 1 psi with tubeless because there's no tube to pinch on anything when you're riding. So tubeless is a great thing for fat bikes. You can save a couple of pounds of weight with it also. Not every fat tire rim is going to be tubeless compatible. Some bikes, they just don't, in that kind of that $800 to $1,500 range, a lot of those wheels aren't going to be tubeless compatible. And that's fine. They're still really fun to ride. But tubeless can be very helpful. Mike, what was the other thing you wanted covered there?
I think you got it. The types of frames and the width and tubeless. And I guess since I have the floor again, if like the different snow conditions, so if it's real fluffy snow, you would even take your pressure down more. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, the snow conditions, that when we're talking about tire pressure, it's not you don't just set your tires at 7 psi every day and go out. It's going to vary depending on the trail conditions. So like I'm saying, I like to keep mine a little higher to start. And then once I get going, I'll deflate because you can kind of see what the trail condition is. If it snowed yesterday and they groomed the trail, it's going to be a really soft snow typically. You're going to want to run a lot lower pressure on that day than you would today, for instance, where the trails have kind of gotten rain and they're really packed down and hard. Today you could probably run a standard mountain bike on the trail without damaging it in some areas. Whereas if we got 5 inches of snow and they just groom it, it's really soft and fluffy, and you're going to be wanting to run around 5 psi. You really want that tire to be deforming when the snow is soft. It makes a huge difference in your ride and your demeanor. Once you get out there, it can be very frustrating if you're slipping around too much, and a couple pounds of pressure can make all the difference in your happiness on that ride.
We have a question in the chat window here from Anne, and she said, "Thanks so much, Ryan. Wondering if you might be able to point us to a website and/or resource that lists local trails and routes. I'm looking for places in the West Metro that are not technical single track, ideally wider trails, not super rutted."
Ooh, that's a good question. So I'm going to get this website up here. Mark, MinnesotaOffroadCyclist.org. I'll put that in the chat box here for you. It's a place to go to kind of see what all the trails in the metro are. As far as not technical single track, wider trails, not super rutted in the West. So there's some places that are going to have kind of a mix of both. The River Bottoms isn't really West Metro, but it's not super technical single track, and it actually offers some fairly wide sections if you're riding from that Sibley House in Mendota Heights area. That would be a really great place to start. East Metro, Lake Elmo, has a trail system that they groom for multi-use. Otherwise, West Metro, I'm not quite sure. I would look for places that have multi-use groomed trails. That's going to be really helpful because most multi-use groomed trails will allow fat biking. There's also, let's see here, some state parks. I'm going to put the Explore Minnesota up here as well. They have some trails that are set up for multi-use that you can fat bike on in the Twin Cities.
Great.
So take a look at that.
Great. Maybe touch on e-bikes a little bit. Are there fat bikes that are e-bikes also? There
are fat bikes that are e-bikes. They are really, really fun. They add a little bit of weight to the bike because you got the battery and the motor. Norco is one of the companies that we carry that sell the e-bike version, and that's a game changer for anybody that wants to get out and go a little farther than maybe they could before. That e-bike will take you. They're actually so powerful you can't use their top speeds on these fat bike trails. It's too fast. If you're on the road with them, you can just go crazy, but off-road, yeah, you're going to have to push that button back to that low setting just to give yourself enough because they have so much power these days. The power is so well controlled on them. Once you get on everyone should go try one of these. They're so much fun. E-bikes in general, but go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry. Would they be pedal assist or would they be throttle or both? Or...
The ones we do are pedal assist. The throttle e-bikes, that'd be a little scary for me, being off-road with a throttle. I think I'd get myself into a lot of trouble out there. And I'm pretty well versed in mountain biking and fat biking. I would stick with that assist. So that way you're just getting a little extra boost of energy without having a throttle there.
Very good. Then we have another question in the chat window. Is it legal to ride snowmobile trails in such as Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan? Thank you, Bob, for that question.
That we're going to have to look up here. Let's see. If it's legal, I would be very, very cautious about snowmobile trails because some of those riders are going to come up really, really fast on you. and you're not going to want to be anywhere near where they are. Let's see.
I have to agree with you. I ridden once and I thought, oh, I'll hear them when they come up, and I did not hear them before they came up. It's like, so yeah, I agree that they are quite dangerous to ride.
Yeah, so it looks like what I'm seeing here is snowmobile use only is typically on those trails. They're not going to want you out there on a bicycle. And then I see special care for e-bike batteries in the cold. Yeah, there can be. You don't have to do anything with e-bike batteries in the cold, but they will get longer run times if you put them in there's like a neoprene cover you can buy, I think, on Amazon. That's kind of a wrap that goes around that tube. Storing the bike indoors until your ride will help. So that way the battery has the highest capacity. So yeah, absolutely get a neoprene wrap for any of those bikes. Portable pumps that are easy to carry and fairly quickly reinflate a tire when needed. Great question, John. So there are hand pumps that you can use. I carry one with me while on my rides. I use that pump kind of as a top off. I don't use, if your tire is fully deflated, boy, it's going to take you a long time to fill up a tire with one of these small hand pumps. I carry it to just kind of increase someone's tire pressure on the ride. If you have a flat tire, or you're all the way flat, and with a lot of us that are riding tubeless, that hand pump is not going to work really well. You're going to want to carry like a CO2 system, a CO2 inflator with quite a large volume CO2. They make a 38-gram CO2 cartridge that can typically reinflate a fat bike tire very quickly. If it has gone flat for whatever reason. I actually carry a tube with me as well for these big group rides that I do. If I'm riding by myself, I don't always carry a tube, but with these big groups, I always have a tube with me. If someone were to get a large puncture that the tubeless can't seal, I don't want anybody out there 7 miles away from the trailhead without being able to get back. So we always carry a tube. Someone's asking, oh, go ahead, John.
What I've experienced a couple times is, I go ride from my house down to the woods, deflate the tires somewhat. They're fine in the woods. And then I got to ride 3 or 4 miles home on these deflated tires. It's like a ton of work. It'd be nice to be able to quickly, add some air to them.
So yeah, I would carry that. There's some higher capacity hand pumps you can carry. Yeah. Those work pretty well. There's also a company out there that just started making a tiny little battery operated inflator that you can put over your valve. They're fairly expensive. I think they're a couple $100, but you can add a couple PSI to those tires in just a few seconds with one of these little battery operated ones. And they're pocket sized. If you don't want to spend that much money, to just get a high volume hand pump. There's a company called Lezyne that makes them. They have a little hose that comes on the end. So you can kind of get it into fairly tight wheelbases.
Can you write the name of that in the chat? How to spell it?
I will add that in here right now.
Cool. Thank you.
There's another question in the chat. What miles per hour cutoff on fat bikes? Is it 18 miles per hour? This is from Bob.
Most of those bikes are going to be 20-mile-an-hour cutoffs. Most e-bikes in general right now in the US that are a assist motor are a 20-mile-per-hour cutoff. Some of the cargo bikes, they're in the 15s, but otherwise it's 20 for the most part. There's a couple out there that'll do 28, but I haven't seen any 28-mile-an-hour cutoffs in the fat tire bikes. They'd be really, really fast on any of those. But so yeah, it's about 20. And then they'll go faster, but the motor will cut out at 20 miles an hour.
Ryan, could you also comment? You had mentioned on helmets that people are using like downhill ski helmets. You seem to imply, or I guess there is specific helmets for bicycling in the winter. I would think ventilation would be important. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, so there are bike specific fat tire like winter helmets. The difference between the bicycle helmet and the ski helmet is the bicycle ones are rated for bicycle impacts. That's a different testing program that they go through. A lot of people will wear a ski helmet, but they do sell bicycle specific. The bicycle specific ones, as well as a lot of ski helmets, there's a slider on the top of the helmet that you can open and close the vents for different weather conditions, which is really, really helpful. A lot of them have like a insulated earmuffs, kind of like what you're wearing here, as well as a chin strap that has some insulation and protection on it also, so you're not freezing from that. We still wear hats underneath a lot of the time, but that open and close vent is very, very helpful. That's a good question, Ed. Thank you.
Looks like Irv made a comment here. Yeah, he has seen many issues with tubeless tires at low temps, and he carries a tube as recommended. Yep.
So working in the bike shop here, we see all sorts of kind of problems with tubeless systems. Most of those stem from the tape job not being perfectly applied. If the rim isn't taped and sealed really, really well, you can get some air leaking out. And then keeping that sealant at the right level and enough of it and the right kind is very important. There are some companies that the sealant isn't really good for, say, sub-zero temperatures, where there's other brands that have sealant that is really good for these sub-zero temperatures. So make sure you're getting a sealant that is good for these really low weather temperatures. And yep, carrying a tube, absolutely recommended. Just as a backup, it's a really good idea to have one. And then George, you say you put a rain cover over your helmet that keeps the wind out. That would certainly work. There's actually some summer helmets that have clip-on covers that they'll use to prevent the wind from coming in also. Or like a neoprene cover they have too.
Very good. Oh, hi, Peggy. I know. Hey, yeah, how are you? Do you ride Ryan's rides on Now Sports?
Peggy, you got to unmute.
Okay, am I unmuted? Am I unmuted now? Shoot.
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear the question, but I love this whole talk and I can't wait to refer this recording to my friends because people are interested in fat biking for sure.
Very good. We got a couple other comments here.
Yeah. For the sealant recommendation for winter, we like the Orange Seal Sub-Zero sealant. That seems to work best for us. We've kind of experimented with sealant over the years. We like most brands. We like the Stans. We like the Muck Off, and we like the Orange. In the winter, we generally use the Orange Sub-Zero that we found to be the best. It can fill the larger holes in the tires when things go south.
It looks like Irv made a comment here. Keeping feet warm is a major factor. An insulated hunting boot with toe warmers works to a point, and once it gets cold, like Sub-Zero, then an overlooked item is a pair of NEOS overshoes. Irv, did I hear that you did the Arrowhead 135? Did I hear that right? Are you there, Irv? Oh, anyways, if we maybe have a comment on that, Ryan?
Any footwear that keeps your feet warm is good by me. I typically clip in. I use, I've got a couple different pairs of clip-in winter boots that I use. I have one from 45 North, and then I have a pair from Lake, depending on how cold it is. So it's for me, it's good to have a couple different options for clip-in style. As far as the hunting boots, yeah, I would, again, I'd have a couple different versions, a lighter pair and a heavier pair for different temperatures. But absolutely, a really good insulated hunting boot would work great for those fat tire rides and keeping your feet dry as well.
Looks like he's also made a comment about face-wise, instead of a face mask that'll let ice up, that he's seen many use masking tape on nose and cheeks. Mask. Yeah.
I haven't seen that. Sounds like an interesting one.
Yeah. Can you unmute, Irv? Or
I want to know if he did that right.
yeah, me too.
You're a badass, Irv.
So,
Am I seeing this right, Irv? You've done 5 Arrowhead 135s.
wow.
Am I on?
Yes, you're on.
Oh, I'm on. Yeah, I've done 5. I've only finished 3. But then I've done 5 Arrowheads and finished 4 of those. Or Susitna 100s. But in fact, this weekend is going to be the start of the Susitna 100 up in Alaska. That starts Saturday and goes through Monday, I think. They have 48 hours. So
You're amazing. That's incredible.
You say I've only finished this many. You know, I don't think anybody else in this group has started any. That's a huge event to complete. That's amazing.
Well, my last one was when I was 75, and so I'm the oldest now, and now I have a Canadian who's going to be 75 next year and is threatening to do it. So that means I may have to come out of retirement.
That sounds like a good time to come out of retirement.
Wow.
Looks like we got another comment here. Oh, a couple of comments. Can you see them?
Yeah. Okay. So we got George is asking if I'm riding my mountain bike with 2-inch studded tires on paved roads, paved trails, or limestone. May I ride pressure lower than the 35-pound minimum? That is you're going to want to stick with your tire minimums on there. If you're riding in a straight line and your tire says 35 PSI minimum, if you were to go below that, you're probably okay, but it's the cornering with those tires that can be a problem. If you go to take a corner and your tire says 25 PSI minimum and you're at 20, you could roll that tire right off the rim. So I would stay with that minimum on those tires, definitely. And Bob, you said you saw a battery heated snow goggle. I haven't seen that. I've seen battery heated grips on the bike, and they have battery heated jackets. They have battery heated gloves. They have battery heated socks now too. So quite a few different versions of those to keep warm. Marsha, you've got neoprene warmers with a pair of socks inside your boots. How's that working for you?
I think they're great because they just are just at the toe. So it's not a whole nother extra layer of socks. And then it's not, I mean, they're not quite as good as like toe warmers or whatever. They don't do quite as warm, but if you just need a little bit of extra to keep my toes just go cold, I have bad circulation. So I found them very easy. They're like, I don't know, 16, 20 bucks or something. And just slide them over either under your socks or over your socks. And then, like I said, it doesn't take up as much room in your boots, but keeps your toes extra warm.
I hadn't heard of anybody doing that before. I'm going to have to try that. That sounds like a really good idea because those are fairly thin, like you said, and they won't take up a lot of room. Yeah. That's a really good idea. Thank you for that.
And then I learned at the ladies' fat tire clinic that Peggy and I went to in January up at Cable at Berkey that you can stop the chemical heat warmers or toe hand warmers by just putting them in a bag. So if they're like 8 hours and you only use them for 2, put them in a Ziploc bag, get all the air out, and they'll stop heating, and then you can continue to use them so they last longer.
That's a great tip. If anybody has any chance to ride with Peggy, you guys got to go ride with her. She's a lot of fun to ride with. You end up coming home with really good stories after the ride. But she's great out there. We love having her out. What other questions does anybody have for me here? Christy, we got to get you out with us. We're ready whenever you are.
Looks like maybe the questions are kind of winding up. Any more questions out there? Comments?
The
I
big
have
thing
one.
for anybody that's new is just come out and ride with us sometime. We're a really good group of people. It's a beginner friendly pace. It's a really good introduction to the bike, and you can learn a lot from riding with these groups.
I just had one question for you. Any tips on maintenance of your bike, riding in the winter, your chain, your rear derailleur, that type of thing, especially if you encounter, roads where there's any sort of road salt in the environment?
Yeah, Rich, that is a great question. There's a big difference between riding off-road in the winter for maintenance and riding on the road for winter for maintenance. Off-road, there's no salt, so it's just water. There's really not much cleaning you have to do after a ride other than keep your chain lube like you normally would. If you're riding on the road, huge difference. The salt we get in Minnesota will eat your bike away. So John, who commutes into our shop here daily, all year round, he kind of gives his bike a rinse almost every day when he comes in to get that salt off. If you ride every day in the salt on the roads, I wouldn't say you need to rinse your bike every day, but maybe once a week, give it a good rinse off to get all that salt off the bike, and then re-lubricate the chain, especially. You could take some light oil and put it on the derailleur pivots, on the spoke nipples, so they don't corrode. But yeah, keeping anything that's a threaded moving part, any pivot is with some light oil is going to be very important in the winter to get that salt from eating away at it. But off-road, not much you have to do.
Oh, yeah. Off-road bikes get salt spray when on the car rake. That's true, George.
As far as chain lube, George, there's many kinds. Wet lube, if you're commuting daily, wet lube will work great. My problem with wet lube is it gets really dirty. I don't like my bike to get all filthy. So I still don't use wet lube in the winter. What we've been using is more of a wax-based lube. You have to apply it more often, but it stays really clean, and it seems to work really well even in the winter. And George is saying, off-road bikes still get salt spray when in the back of the car rack. They absolutely do, and it can be really bad. So I'd stick with that. If you're riding a bunch once a week, kind of get that salt spray off the bike. That'd be really helpful for maintenance.
This is George. I had bought a small, inexpensive sprayer pump. Most people use it in the garden for putting on pesticides or something like that. I just fill it with warm water and rinse down the bike, and I found it being really convenient. And
yeah, that's a great idea. Most of us don't have the luxury of having a bike shower in their home like we do at the shop. So that little chemical sprayer filled with water and soap would be a really good idea. That's great, George. Bob is asking about pedals. Speed plate pedals in the winter? Probably not. You're going to get those full of snow. Shimano SPDs or an SPD style pedal would be the best for a clip-in. A lot of people ride flats. Bob, if you're one that rides clip in all year round, off-road, on-road, Going to flat pedals might be a hard transition. But I have a lot of riders that do just that very thing. They don't like to be clipped in the winter. But yeah, you can get by with flat pedals just fine all winter long, or clip in if you like. But we have people who do both.
There's some pedals too that are flat on one side and then have like the SPD on the other side too. I think Shimano makes those.
Yeah, I have the ones that are what you just described, the flat on one and clip on the other, but I found myself always trying to get it flipped to the other side and not want to clip in. So I just actually changed to flat.
Yeah, ditto. I had flat pedals and and they had the flip flop. Yeah, I didn't like having to flip them all the time to the right side. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this is George. On Mike's rides, I found that I do enjoy having the double-sided pedals, because if we're on the road for a ways, I can clip down.
Yeah,
that's
I would
what
say
we used
just
to do.
use whatever pedal you're comfortable using. Personally, I don't like to be searching for my clip. Well, like Marcia said, it's kind of challenging to be flipping the pedal over trying to get clipped in. But it is very versatile too if you're doing some stuff on the road and you want to be not clipped in as well. There are some pedals out there that it's a clip-in style pedal, but then it has like a platform built around it. So both sides have clips and it's got a big platform. Shimano and other companies make those. I think Crank Brothers makes a pretty good one of that style as well. So that way, if you can't find that cleat or you just want to pedal with standard shoes, you can kind of get away with it that way also.
Mine, I'm actually usually searching for the flat because I don't want to get stuck in on a challenging more trail. So that's why I went to flat. So I didn't want to be clipped in on some of the more intermediate or advanced trails lately. So.
Looks like Irv made a comment here. A young lady on the SU 100 1 year wore her running shoes and a pair of Neos and did great. Another wore her Seeger mucklucks, got 4 or 5 miles down the trail, and the muckluck ties got wrapped up in the derailleurs, etc. Not nice. Yeah. Good observation, Irv.
On this last week's ride we were at, it's interesting, everyone was wearing gloves to start, and a few miles in you see all the gloves being changed, or a bunch of people riding barehanded once they all warmed up. So it's interesting someone could get through that with just a pair of running shoes and did great. So that's pretty cool.
How are we doing on time there, Edward?
I think we're good. I think probably we should wrap up unless there's any other questions. So I want to thank you, Ryan. It's very, very informative, and especially you and Now Bikes for taking the time tonight. And Mike, thank you so much for coordinating the session. And a big thanks to all of you for attending the session. The recording, as I said earlier, will be up after it is uploaded to our YouTube channel, and the link will be in the notes. We'll have some notes on tonight's session, so especially for people that didn't attend, and I'll try to get the links that have been put up too. We are, the Council of Regents is working on other sessions, including bicycle maintenance, ride with GPS, night riding, commuting, gravel biking, bicycle advocacy, just to name a few of the things that we're looking at. If you have some other ideas, please write to me at bikeyou@biketcbc.org, and we can discuss those at our council meetings. So again, thank you so much for attending tonight.